In a previous video, we talked about the problem of evil, and if you guys are interested in watching that video, I'll try to leave a link in the description. Today, we're not going to really focus on why does evil exist, but rather we're going to focus on what exactly evil is. Because in today's world, we kind of live in a postmodern world, right? A world that really values relativism, subjective truth, things like that. So it basically says what may be true for you may not be true for me. So subjective truth, to give you an example of what subjective truth is versus objective truth. A subjective truth may be a statement like, I think Rocky Road ice cream is the best. Well, that may be true for me, but does everyone think Rocky Road ice cream is the best? Well, maybe not. So that's my truth, that's subjective truth to just me, but it's not true for everyone. So then what is objective truth? So objective truth is basically this concept that what is true for one is true for everyone, right? So for example, I may say 2 + 2 = 4. Well, is that statement true? Yes, it's true for me. But is it true for everyone? Yes, it's true for everyone. So that's objective truth. Objective truth says it's true for everyone. It's an absolute. But relativism basically says that there are no absolutes. But that's a contradiction, right? Because to say that there are no absolutes is to say that there is absolutely no absolutes. So that is an absolute. It's a contradiction. And they also say that there is no truth. Well, that's a contradiction too. Because if the statement, there is no truth, is true, then obviously there's truth. So it doesn't make much sense. But in today's society, we kind of live in this world where people kind of think that way. They say that there is no truth, that all of our truth is just relative to us individually, which is quite the American thing to say, because America is very individualistic versus many of the other countries in the world who are very collectivist. But America is very, very individualistic. But they'll say what may be true for me may not be true for you, things like that. So that's subjective truth. That's true. There are some things such as subjective truth, but not everything is subjective. There are things as objective. In fact, relativists saying that everything is subjective is an objective thing. So there's lots of contradictions, doesn't make sense. So then the question becomes, what does that have to do with the topic today? What is evil? Well, remember, we like to define things, we like to define truth individually, say, well, what may be evil for you to do may not be evil for me to do. And that just causes anarchy, right? Because if we were to say, well, it's wrong for me to murder. What if someone else says that that's not true for them? That's not wrong for them to murder. Well, then they can murder and say that it's not wrong for them because truth is relative to them. So, I mean, it could cause so much anarchy, and I could change my mind later on and say, well, maybe it was wrong for me to murder before, but now it's not wrong. So, I mean, it just causes so much anarchy. If everyone gets to define their own truth, then there's just so much chaos in the world. So the question becomes, what is true? What is good? What is evil? If we don't define good and evil, if we're not gods that define good and evil, then who does define what is good and evil? Well, God defines what is good and evil. So what is a good definition of what is evil? I would define it as something that goes against what God wants, right? So if God says, I don't want you guys to kill, if we kill, that goes against what God wants, and that's evil. Since he said he doesn't want us to steal, if we steal, that's evil. Since he said he doesn't want us to lie, if we lie, that's evil. So anything that goes against what God wants, then it's evil, right? And anything that goes along with what he wants is good. So things like lying, stealing, killing, all those things go against what God wants. Showing love for one another, that's something that God does want us to do. Therefore, that would be considered good. Millard Erickson, in his book, Christian Theology, he talks about the problem of evil. And one of the things he talks about is how we have this huge misconception that what is good is anything that brings us happiness, right? So if I get a new car and it makes me happy, then that thing's a good thing. At the same time, he might say, anything that doesn't bring me happiness is evil. So if I lose my car because I stop making payments or something and I lose my car, then that thing's an evil thing that happened to me. When we try to take God out of the picture and we try to define good and evil by ourselves, we are honestly trying to make ourselves our own gods. This kind of humanistic tendency that we have to try and become gods ourselves. And the truth is, we'd be terrible gods, right? We'd be terrible judges of what is good and what is evil because we can't see the future. God can see the future. God knows the complexity of life, whereas we do not. What we see as temporarily happy, as immediately happy, we think is good, but it could be terrible along the way, such as taking drugs. I heard someone say that they like taking drugs. I'm like, well, of course you like taking drugs. It makes you happy, but then later on you struggle from drug addictions and all these different things. So obviously it's not going to make you happy in the future, but we're so focused on the immediate, and that's not what God's focused on. God is omniscient. God knows everything. He knows the complexities of life, and he knows what is good for us, what is bad for us. So let's just leave up the definition for good and evil to him.